Imagine waking up one morning to find that you need a medication with every meal, maybe with a machine or an injection, and to discover that you must change your diet forever. Today I will be talking about how living a life with diabetes, specifically type 2, involves many complications. For those of you who do not know, diabetes is a problem with your blood glucose or blood sugar levels to rise higher than normal. Having type 2 diabetes means that your body does not make use of insulin properly. Insulin is a chemical produced by your pancreas to help keep your blood glucose at normal levels. I have been expanding my knowledge on the subject for several weeks now, and in addition, I have many close friends and family members who all have diabetes. I'm sure all of you enjoy indulging in junk foods and eating to your heart's content. According to Hannah Nichols, a journalist with experience writing medical and health information for all audiences, being overweight and physically inactive and eating the wrong foods all contribute to our risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Today, I will be talking about how people who develop diabetes learn to live with it, must continue to maintain the lifestyle needed when having diabetes, and the consequences of straying from a healthy diabetic lifestyle. The first thing I would like you to know about is learning to live with diabetes. Once a person is diagnosed with diabetes, it is their job to become accustomed to the new lifestyle they must lead. Their new lifestyle begins with the change of their diet. This means that they will need to switch from a junk and sugary-filled diet to a healthier, less sugary diet. For children, this concept falls on the parents. The parents will need to be more conscientious of the items that are purchased at the grocery store for the sake of their child. For example, instead of using this type of sugar, they will switch to this type of sugar, which is an artificial sweetener specifically designed to not contain all the sugars or less sugars than normal sugar have. Along with their new diet, they must perform a certain amount of physical exercise. Physical exercise is beneficial for type 2 diabetics in many aspects. According to WebMD.com, when you exercise, your body needs extra energy from glucose. In other words, when a diabetic takes part in physical exercise, the muscles and liver in the body release glucose for fuel. This allows the body to use insulin, which in turn controls your blood sugar. Exercise does not only help regulate blood sugar, it also contributes to a blood circulation stress relief and other beneficial symptoms. In addition to exercise and dietary fulfillments, a diabetic must use insulin when needed and correctly. As I mentioned before, insulin is a chemical designed by the pancreas to regulate blood glucose levels. Insulin is released into the bloodstream, where it communicates with the red blood cells to absorb sugar for energy. However, the pancreas in a diabetic's body is unable to produce insulin, which results in high blood sugar. Therefore, a synthetic form of insulin is produced or prescribed by a medical professional to perform the task that the pancreas cannot. Now that you have an idea of how diabetics become accustomed to their new diet, let's take a look at how they deal with it. As a diabetic, it is essential to keep diabetes under control. As you may know, people often tend to get lazy. After having diabetes for a while, some diabetics begin to cut corners. For example, they do not check their blood sugar as often as they should, and they stop giving their body the amount of insulin that is needed. At a young age, it is often difficult to balance school, social life, a job, and have diabetes at the same time. Because of this, teenagers often will resort to putting their social life in front of keeping control of their diabetes. Because of the lack of responsibility, many consequences can occur and result in a shorter lifespan. Now that I've explained to you the many ways in which diabetics don't properly care for themselves, let's take a look at the consequences of not caring. If a diabetic does not consistently care for their body, life-changing events will occur. One of the possible events include blindness. Blindness will occur if blood glucose is not taken care of daily, because the sugar can cause blood vessels to swell and leak fluid into the back of the eyes. However, according to the National Eye Institute, blood glucose will cause other people to develop abnormal new blood vessels on the surface of the retina. These loss of blood cells will send messages to the brain, which will then begin to build more blood vessels to nourish the retina. However, these blood vessels are very fragile and more susceptible to leaking, therefore causing loss of sight. This is what we see in the beginning stages of their vision loss. This is what they will start to see because the blood pools in their eyes. They won't be able to see past that. Another consequence of not taking care of diabetics or diabetes can result in the loss of a limb. Over time, high blood sugar levels can harm the nerves. The loss of nerves will lead to less feeling and blood circulation to your limbs. For example, skin sores or ulcers are more susceptible to developing on your feet. Ulcers have the ability to damage tissue and bones severely, which may result in amputation. Lastly, improper care of diabetes can result in death. People with type 2 diabetes have higher levels of substances in their blood that cause blood clots. Blood clots can block the coronary arteries and cause a heart attack or even death. Along with the risk of death from high blood sugar, there is a possibility of death from low blood sugar. When a diabetic's blood sugar gets too low, the body will begin to shut down. If the body is not able to receive any sugar in an allotted amount of time, the body goes into diabetic shock and eventually into a coma. As you can see, many life-changing events can occur if diabetics do not consistently care for their bodies. Today, I have talked about how diabetics must change their way of living when diagnosed, learn to maintain that lifestyle, and the consequences of not taking care of themselves. As you can see, living with diabetes is not easy to adjust to. Diabetics must put in the effort to stay healthy and live the rest of their lives to the fullest.
Aaron, share your thoughts, please.
Well, I thought that she had a good attention grabber to start off the speech. The thesis statement was pretty clear about just what she was going to be talking about, and then I also thought it was good that she explained that it's almost a higher risk if teens don't pay attention to their diabetes, because it seems like it's harder for them to pay attention to it compared to adults. And then when she explained the consequences, she did a good job of going into depth of what each consequence is and what can happen over time. And then she seemed to flow through the speech pretty well. And then her eye contact, it was kind of there at the beginning, but then throughout the speech, she did a better job at making eye contact with everyone.
Okay. Well, I'm going to agree with you about several things and disagree with you on a couple of things. I thought that you had a pretty grim visualization as your attention device, and you identified the topic pretty quickly. That was effective. Your purpose statement was pretty clearly expressed. I thought you had an excellent preview, so the start of the speech is solid. Internally, you had good citation of your information, especially in the first part of the speech. I think it got a little bit thin in the later part of the speech. I'm sure that there's research there, but it's not being attributed in the oral part of the presentation as much as it was in the first part of the presentation. I think that you have some good ideas about getting the audience involved. You mentioned, for instance, people who are diabetic as teenagers and problems that they could have. I thought that was the right subject area to talk about, but then I was waiting so what's an example of that kind of thing? What could happen? What sacrifices do they make? What are the consequences? Are the consequences only the long-term kinds of things? So when you're 17 and 18 and you ignore taking your blood sugar and keeping your glucose levels proper, that shows up 40 years later as the blindness, or do things start happening immediately? Do they have problems then? What kinds of things do kids run into? Like you're at school, for instance. It just seemed like an example there would make sense. So you've got kind of the technical stuff there, but you need to do something to make it a little bit more interesting for the audience so that it's engaging. The visuals, they were integrated into the speech pretty effectively. You don't need the laser pointer to point to two different things on the visual because that's all you've got there. As you can see on the right, there's the sugar. On the left, there's the Splenda. A pointer's good if you had some teeny tiny detail that you had to get people to focus on. But otherwise, I think that that's just a little distracting. It becomes a crutch that people go to that I think is problematic. It did look like you missed one slide in your presentation. You had to slip by the needles that you were using to put the insulin in. They went right by. But I did like the visualization. I shouldn't say it that way. I like the visualization of the visualization. In other words, the way you visualized the blindness for people who have this long-term problem and they start developing difficulties with their vision. I thought that the way that you imaged that was very effective. Now, I will kind of disagree with Aaron a little bit. I thought your eye contact was moderate, primarily because you're reading a lot. And if you really want to know how I know that you're reading, it's because of the way I'm listening to you. It just sounds like you're reading through it. There's not a normal variation of conversation. It sounds like you're going line by line, and when I look up I see you flipping through pages, so it's pretty clear that you're using a script there, and I can almost watch you moving your eyes across the page. Now you do look up occasionally, especially when you get to the visuals, which I think is what you want to do more frequently. We're not heavily emphasizing that right now, so that's why I'm saying that I don't want to say not to worry about it, but it's I told you about my colleague, and he does the whole thing where everybody practices it. There are no note cards at all in his class. I mean, nothing. You got to have it. No note cards, no podium, when you stand up to give your speech, it's just you and the audience. And I like that idea. I'm trying to get to that, but I'm trying to do it without having to take people's information out of their hands and force them to memorize things. Apparently, I'm going to have to do that. Slap you on the hand and say, no, you can't do that. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.